This is the first of our series of webinars, and I really want to thank Erin for putting together this panel and for hosting it. We are going to have our second program or webinar on May 9th, and that will be looking at digital marketing strategies to promote your programming in Extension. So I just put that in the chat box now along with the link to that. So, and then we're looking at doing a series of economic vulnerability and poverty webinars through eExtension further in the probably late summer time frame. So again, thank you for being here. For those of you who are ESP members, you probably know a bit about who we are, but since this is going all across Extension, some of you may not know what Epsilon Sigma Phi is. We're kind of I like to call it the umbrella organization professional organization that has membership from all the other professional organizations and extensions. So that's kind of what we do, is bring together folks from across all spectrums of Extension and do programming and professional development outreach and so forth. And so today we're going to have our program on with Erin, and I'm going to just introduce the three panelists here and then let them jump in and talk about moving into retirement and some ideas about kind of what to think about as we approach that time frame. So I'm going to start with Dr. Erin Yelland, who is the Assistant Professor and Extension Specialist at Kansas State University. She completed her PhD in Family Science and holds a graduate certificate in gerontology, both from the University of Kentucky. Erin is passionate about aging and improving individual, family, and community health, which ultimately promotes optimal aging. Our second panelist is Hunter Stanfield. He is a doctoral student in couple and family therapy at Kansas State University. He completed an undergraduate degree in business administration and a master's degree in psychology and dispute resolution from Pepperdine University, in addition to a master's degree in marriage and family therapy from the University of Alabama. Hunter is a licensed marriage and family therapist at in Kansas, with a clinical specialty focusing on men's mental health. And finally, our third panelist is Rebecca Cherry. She's a first-year couple and family therapy master's student at Kansas State University. She's originally from Ohio, where she completed her undergraduate in psychology at Ohio University. Upon graduation, Rebecca plans to pursue her passion for clinical work. And Rebecca, I hope I pronounced your name right. So that's our three panels today. Erin, I'm going to hand it over to you now. And again, as the other Mark had mentioned there, I will be kind of following any question and answer. So you've got the chat area, but we're really hoping you move for any questions and stuff in the Q&A on your screen there, and I'll be fielding those and kind of, we'll wait to the end of, even though you guys can type stuff in, we'll wait to the very end of the presentation to actually do the Q&A so that Erin and her panelists can get through their presentation. So with that, Erin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, and we'll share our screen in a second so you're not missing anything. But thank you to Mark and to ESP for having us today, and we're very excited to be providing this webinar on tips for a healthy transition into retirement. And I know many of you on this webinar may be considering retirement yourselves, or you might be getting toward that age range where we start to consider retiring from the workforce, but other people might not be considering it at all. And so this webinar is really going to be relevant for anyone, because we're going to be talking about different aspects of social wellness and well-being that we should be considering at any point in our lives. But also, if you are a younger adult, perhaps you have a parent or a grandparent even who is considering retirement and who is getting retirement age. And so we want you to know that this is going to be relevant for many people. So we are excited to be talking about this today because it's really a hot topic. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and my two graduate students who are with me today are sitting over here to my side, but they'll be popping in and out. We'll be switching chairs when it's their turn to share what they have for you today. So just to get started, it's really important to recognize that retirement is a big issue, which I've already been mentioning, but that's really because of that baby boomer generation. So we know that the first of the baby boomers started turning 65 in 2011, and that baby boom cohort really spans 18 years. So we're only 7 years into it. So that means that we have 11 years left of baby boomers who are going to be turning 65 every day. And in fact, we know that 10,000 baby boomers will turn 65 every single day. So we have a whole lot of people that are going to be facing retirement in the near future. And I've heard a lot of concerns in my job as an extension specialist of what am I going to do when I retire? So a lot of people, of course, are worried about their finances. We know that, but that's not what this presentation is about. But we also know that we hear a lot about these social aspects of retirement. For instance, people realize that they're going to be going from spending nights and weekends with their spouse to all of a sudden spending 24/7 with them, perhaps. And that can be really overwhelming and daunting. There's a lot of other things that we're going to be talking about today in regards to retirement. But I just wanted to give you the heads up that I'm not going to be talking about your retirement plans and all of your money and getting that stuff done. We're really going to be looking at more of those social aspects. So retirement for some people can really be this very exciting thing. You know, you've worked all of your life, you've had a wonderful career, or maybe you've bounced around in careers and you're finally getting to that point where you can get out of the workforce. Regardless, retirement is normally seen as a very exciting culmination to the end of your working life. So it's can be just a really exciting and profound moment for many people. And in fact, if you Google image retirement, you're going to see that Google tells us also that retirement is going to be this wonderful, fantastic thing at the beach. So you will see in my series of pictures here that Google is telling us when you Google image retirement that we're going to be at the beach, having a relaxing time, doing some yoga perhaps, lounging with our spouse, and just having a great time at the beach. Now, in reality, that might be part of your retirement plan to go to the beach and hang out. Maybe you're going to move to Florida, but most people aren't going to experience this type of luxury 24/7. So there are some things that we need to be thinking about in this transition so that we don't have some sort of downgrade in our quality of life in retirement. One of the things that many people are really scared about and nervous about is this fear of getting older and this fear of becoming isolated or, you know, what's going to happen to me once I retire. And so they might have this type of vision in their brain. This picture is really sort of dark and shows an isolated man, perhaps with some mobility issues given the walker. But these are things that we want to avoid in retirement, and we want to be focused on more of this lounging in the beach. But this sort of picture can be very nerve-wracking for some people. But there are some steps that you can take throughout your lifespan in order to help impact your ability to age well and to have a successful retirement, a successful and healthy retirement where you have good quality of life. So we're going to be talking about 4 specific things today that we're going to share with you on tips that you can implement into your life wherever you are in your life stage now to help impact you in a better way during your retirement. So the first one, I'm sure, is no surprise to many of you. We're always talking about focusing on a healthy lifestyle. Now, regardless of where you are in your life course, this is so important because the choices that you make today, even as a 20-year-old, can impact your ability to age well. But also the choices that you're making as a 65, 70, or even an 85-year-old can impact your ability to age well. So it's never too early and it's never too late to adopt a healthy lifestyle. The second thing that we're going to share with you is focusing on fundamental relationships. So earlier I gave the example of you go from spending nights and weekends with your spouse to all of a sudden spending 24/7. Now you also have more time to spend with your children and your grandchildren. Now, while that is really exciting and is a wonderful opportunity for people, it can also bring some challenges. So we're going to talk about some conversations that you can have with your loved ones about your retirement. So again, if you're not retirement age, these are conversations that you can think about to maybe have with individuals in your life who are facing retirement in the future or who are currently retired. The third thing that we're going to share with you is how it is so important that you are striving to achieve balance. So one thing that we're going to tell you throughout this presentation is that it's so important to remain active as you age and even after retirement. Although it's wonderful to sit at the beach and do those sorts of things, it's really important that we're also staying socially engaged, that we're learning new things, getting out and about with other people, but we need to find that balance. So some people, when they retire, will engage in all of these activities and they'll be more stressed and overwhelmed than they were when they were working. And other people will do the opposite end of that spectrum, and they'll sit at home and rest and relax all of the time and not really get out and socialize. So we're going to talk a little bit about that balance that we need to achieve. The last thing that we'll talk about today is how it is so important to continue planning for your future. So throughout your life, your working life, especially in your later years of your working career, we're focused so much on financial savings for retirement. When really, once you've hit retirement, you sort of stop thinking about things and planning for your future. You think that you're good and that you've checked that box. But there's other things that we need to consider throughout your lifespan, really, to help you age successfully and have the most beneficial outcomes that you can. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is focusing on that healthy lifestyle. Now, one thing that really surprises people is that retirement is a huge stressor. We know that retirement is this culminating experience, that it's really exciting, and a lot of people feel incredibly liberated and excited about their retirement. But that's often the feeling that people have during the honeymoon stage. So we hear about the honeymoon stage with a lot of different things in our life. Marriage, for example, there's this time after something occurs or a change in your life occurs where everything's wonderful and you're just embracing the change and it's a lot of fun and you get this new sort of rejuvenation in your life. But then after that can come a point where that new phase in your life isn't as great as you thought it was going to be. Perhaps you become bored and you might realize that you can't spend all of your money on vacationing 24/7 once you've hit retirement. So it becomes more of a stressor, and some people might ask themselves, did I retire too soon? What was I thinking? I'm so bored, or, they have some different challenges that they're trying to cope with. So in that sense, retirement can be a really stressful life event. In that context, some of the other stressful events where this research has come from are some pretty negative things. Number one, for example, is the death of a spouse or a child. Number two is divorce, followed by marital separation, imprisonment, death of a close family member, personal injury or illness, dismissal from work. So some really negative things fall on this list, which is really interesting because retirement is often seen as a very positive thing. So among all of these very negative things, divorce, death, imprisonment, we have retirement on this list. So it's really interesting to think about why that's on that list and what you can do to help prepare yourself to avoid having this life-changing, stressful event. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. One of the reasons why retirement can be so stressful is because it has a large ability to change your physical health outcomes and also your mental health outcomes. So you'll see on the slide here that retirees do have the potential to have poorer outcomes, particularly in the areas of mobility, physical illness, and mental health. So studies show that we can have a 5 to 16% increase in mobility challenges. That's your ability to move around, your ability for your body to function to help get you from place to place. We also show a 6% increase in physical illness, whether that's chronic disease or otherwise, and a 9% decline in overall mental health. But what's interesting is that other studies are showing us the opposite. So some people can experience improved outcomes, particularly in the area of sleep and physical activity. So if you take a second to think about that, we see some people improving in sleep and physical activity areas, and that's simply because they might have more time to engage in physical activity or dedicate to that, and they have more time to sleep. They're maybe less stressed with their work and things like that.
Hey, Aaron,
Yeah.
let me jump in for a second. There were some folks who were saying they're not seeing the slides changing. What are you on the 4 tips slide? Okay, you're on focus on a healthy lifestyle now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I think we're good to go then.
Okay. Sorry about that. Going back to this, so the main point here is that a lot of people can have some pretty negative health outcomes when they retire, but some people can also have some more positive health outcomes. But the point of that is what we see on the bottom of the slide here, hopefully, is that retirement has the capacity to change how you manage your personal health. And so really it's up to you and the environment that you're living in, whether or not you're going to have more of that positive outcome on your health or a more negative outcome on your health. And so next I'm going to walk you through some steps. And these are actually taken from the Alzheimer's Association. And they really talk about focusing on a healthy lifestyle. And they talk about 10 different things that we should think about. So the first of which is break a sweat. Of course, we know that it's incredibly important that we incorporate moderate to vigorous physical activity into our lives. And as you retire, and you saw in the previous slide that some people will have improvements in their physical health because they finally have the time to exercise or to dedicate that time in their life. So if you're able to, it's really important that you try to incorporate physical activity in your life at any stage in the lifespan, but especially as we retire, because it's important to know that no matter how old you are or how many health conditions you currently have, it's never too late to help reverse some of those negative trends. The next one is to hit the books, and that is really encouraging people to stay engaged in what's going on in the daily realm of the world. Learning new things is really important in keeping your brain active and engaged. Following your heart is the next one. So like I said, these tips come from the Alzheimer's Association, but they're really applicable to everyone. And they say that following a heart-healthy diet or heart-healthy practices are also good for your brain. So think about a heart-healthy diet, a brain-healthy diet, but also be thinking about what's good for your heart is good for your brain, is good for your overall life and your quality of life. So making sure that you're incorporating those healthy practices is really important. Buddy up is the next one, and this really is talking about those social connections. So we know that older adults who are in retirement, who are socially isolated, have such substantially increased risks of depression and mental health issues. So it is so incredibly important that you are remaining socially aware and socially connected, whether that's with your family, your friends, or your community, because the health benefits of that are so incredible. And I know that when we retire, perhaps we're just sick of being around people all the time, and we want to get away from the workforce and have some time for ourselves. And that is really okay, and that's excellent for you to do. But once you're sort of out of that honeymoon phase and you sort of get your fill of alone time, it's really important to go back and really making sure that you're staying integrated in your community and with your family and your friends. The next one is fueling up right. So of course we start off talking about physical activity on this slide, and at the end we're going to finish with talking about eating a healthful diet. And of course Cooperative Extension across the United States has an abundance of information on a healthy diet. And so if you need some tips or expertise on that, and you want to really talk about making a change in your diet now that maybe you have some more time to dedicate to that once you're retired, I encourage you to reach out to your local extension office and get that information. The next slide focuses on the last 5 tips for a healthy lifestyle. Now, the first one is something that many people may not think about, And the Alzheimer's Association calls it heads up, and that's really about protecting your head from injury. But I'm going to expand that farther and really think about protecting yourself, your whole body, from physical injury. So now that you have potentially more time once you're retired, or if your loved one's retired, it's important to talk about different safety issues in the recreational activities that they're engaging in. So if you start going out for more bike rides or things like that, it's really important that you're wearing a helmet. Maybe if you're engaging in woodworking or doing some sort of other activities that could require eye protection, it's really important that you're doing that sort of thing so that you're saving your body from potential illnesses or diseases or unnecessary injury in the future. The next tip is about stumping yourself, and again, that's sort of that continuing to learn, but also the ability to engage in play and to engage in challenging behaviors and challenging activities. So doing those simple things such as playing cards or doing your Sudoku puzzle in the newspaper, maybe you're a crossword puzzle fan, those are actually really beneficial for your health, because think about if you were sitting there doing a puzzle and if you were sitting there watching TV, right? You're going to be using your brain a lot more and in a lot different ways if you're doing more of those challenging activities. Catching some Z's, so this is referring to sleep, and sleep is so incredibly important, and we saw that when we were talking about quality of life, that if you are you're getting more sleep, that you're actually going to be improving your quality of life. And we saw that some people in retirement are able to do that a little bit more now that they have the time to spend that energy. The next one is butt out, and that's referring to smoking. And so this is, of course, is something that we really need to consider doing across our lifespan if you're currently a smoker. But there are a lot of good educational programs and some other types of interventions that can help people stop smoking, which is really important. And again, I'm going to go back to this. It doesn't matter how long you've been a smoker or anything like that. If you have the willingness and desire to quit, it can make a difference in your life. So studies actually show that if you, by 1 year of stopping smoking, you cut your risk for coronary heart disease in half. And by 10 years, you cut your risk for lung cancer in half. So it's really important that no matter what age you are, what stage you're in, if you are a smoker, that you try to consider stopping that practice. Lastly is taking care of your mental health. So it is, of course, very important that you're doing this throughout your lifespan, but we know that many older adults can have an increased risk for some mental health issues. And so it's very important that you're getting those taken care of, because if you leave mental health issues go untreated, they can actually turn and sort of have that domino effect, and you can get a lot worse outcomes from those types of untreated mental health conditions. So we really want to make sure that if you are feeling any sort of mental health concerns for yourself or for your loved ones, that we are taking care of those so that it doesn't lead into more issues in the future. So next, I'm going to pass it on to one of our graduate students here who is going to share with us some really good information on focusing on fundamental relationships. And so Hunter is going to join us and tell us some good things that he's learned as a couple and family therapist and through his other work in graduate school as well. So we're going to pass it on to him.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Dr. Yellen mentioned, I'm going to kind of shift and talk about what she has already emphasized. In addition to your physical health and mental health is an important part of considering what is to come in retirement, and that's on your important fundamental relationships. So with every life transitions, if you can think back on those that you've had, whether that's been starting to college or heading to college, starting your first job, maybe getting married, maybe it was when you had your first child, or even for a job you had to change geographic regions. In each of these life transitions, there are ways that our most fundamental relationships, meaning our immediate family and close friends, have to and begin to change. In the instances of getting married, you go through a process of learning how to relate to a person that isn't going anywhere for a while. You develop routines. Maybe you had unspoken expectations and as a result had to figure out how to communicate those to your partner or family members, and then work to establish a compromise or a new way of working together. And retirement brings up opportunities, these same types of opportunities, that relationships between you and others are going to change because a major part of your life is going to either stop, whether you're going to stop working or maybe shift to part-time or take on new responsibilities. So what does that mean? It's the same idea applies. The challenge, though, is that often it's one person within a relationship that's going through retirement, while the other person or person's lives are staying the same, so to say. But in reality, everyone's life is going to change. So what does this mean? It means, as Dr. Yellen has already touched on, we have maybe more or less time for important relationships, depending upon what our hopes and goals for retirement are. So a retiree may hope for more or less time with their partner, or spending more or less time with their adult children or grandchildren. There's opportunities for new routines and rituals as well. How a retiree used to go through their day changes as a major part is removed, meaning that, for example, they may have more or less time to engage in activities inside or outside the home. And the most important part when considering about or thinking about our fundamental relationships is not to slide into these changes. So the idea of retirement brings up all kinds of ideas about new opportunities and possibilities. However, when these are uncommunicated or assumed that the other person or persons know about them, challenges can occur. So think of uncommunicated expectations like being a black plague for relationships. So if that's the case, then what's the alternative in heading in retirement? And the alternative is have and begin planning for intentional conversations with those who are closest to you. As my old boss used to say, not planning is planning to fail. And just as you approached major life transitions or new projects at work before, taking the time to sit down with everyone involved and that may be affected is an important first step in managing and maintaining these fundamental relationships that mean so much to us. So think of this as being on the same page with where you're going and what you're doing along the way with anyone who may be potentially riding along with you in the vehicle that is retirement. And there's an old saying too that goes something like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with others. And that definitely applies to retirement. So to retire well, we need to consider how it may affect our most fundamental relationships. So how does this happen? So here are some tips for beginning to have these conversations with those that are most important to us. The first is make time. Set aside adequate time and in advance of your retirement date. Recognize that it may take more than one conversation to work through everything, and that for some of our fundamental relationships, this will be an ongoing conversation. The second is invite others. Let your family members know that you're wanting to share this with them and that you're wanting to hear from them. So think of it maybe like a family chat or a family dinner, and draw on ways in the past that your family has had important conversations together. Next is come prepared. Come prepared with a list of ideas and questions to work through. Provide these to those who will be present too, so that they can make the most of the time that you have together. The next is be okay with talking about what you hope for. For some of us, it's challenging to talk about what we may want or hope for. And in some cases, this isn't an idea that we have maybe spent much time thinking about. In planning for retirement, think about what it is that would allow you to continue living a full and healthy life. Perhaps take some of the ideas from this presentation that have already been presented or will be presented and see how those may fit into your retirement. Also recognize that what you may hope for now may likely change as you progress through retirement. So it may be helpful to break this up into phases or periods and to talk more about short-term and then maybe long-term hopes for your retirement. The next is be okay with listening about what others want for you. On the flip side, since retirement affects more than you, be prepared to hear from your fundamental relationships about what they may be expecting of you. Again, this is an initial conversation and doesn't mean anything is set in stone or permanent, but recognizing that maybe your adult child or children may want you to spend more time with them is important for them to share and may also be important for your overall well-being. So if these are the tips for kind of how to prepare for these, next we have what types of questions are important to ask. So think of these first off as starter questions. Once you've worked through these together, maybe you can come up with a plan for how you'll evaluate if what you've decided on is working. So one of the first questions to ask is, when I retire, here's what I may want to spend my time doing. What do you think about that? What might you like for us to accomplish together once I retire? How should we make decisions together about issues that might arise when I'm retired? Again, this is drawing on maybe how you have made decisions together in the past, but it also may bring about new ways of working together with your partner or with other family members to make decisions together. Now that I'm going to be spending more time at home, let's talk about the house or family responsibilities. I'm comfortable doing X, Y, and Z. What do you think about taking care of A, B, C? Again, this is just an initial conversation, but it's recognizing that the racial relationship dynamics are changing. One person may have more time and may be able to take on more of the responsibilities and house and family responsibilities at home. Next, maybe with your adult child or adult children. Now that I have more free time, I'm comfortable visiting you and maybe add in a time frame. What do you think about that? Again, sometimes there may be an unmet or uncommunicated expectation that now that a retiree has more free time, he or she will become the default babysitter for the grandchildren. And you may want to spend more time with your grandchild or grandchildren, but you may also want to spend more time investing in new hobbies or trying new activites. So initiating a conversation before is what's really, really most important. And then finally, what else might change or has changed now that I'm retired? This kind of gets at what they may be seeing that maybe you're not thinking about or considering, and again, invites them into the conversation. And the most important part about focusing on fundamental relationships is realizing that retirement affects more than the retiree. It can have important effects on their most important relationships, and by making the time to intentionally address and work through those before starting retirement, the retiree and their relationships will be able to effectively work through any challenges that arise. So now I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Becca, and she's going to start maybe diving into maybe some of the more specifics about, with more time, how you may be able to handle it as a retiree.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm going to be expanding on what Dr. Yellen talked about earlier with striving to achieve balance. So specifically looking at, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? And how to balance life after work and what that looks like. So I actually want to characterize these two extremes when transitioning into retirement. I'm going to call one Olivia the overachiever and one lonely Lisa. So Olivia the overachiever is typically the type of retiree that jumps into retirement with a lot of new plans for family time, volunteering, philanthropy involvement, travel, committee meetings, etc. So she typically overschedules herself because she has more free time and she's afraid of being bored in retirement and feeling unfulfilled. Unfortunately, with no time spent relaxing or engaging in self-care with a busy schedule, Olivia can begin to show signs of burnout. So on the other hand, lonely Lisa is typically the type of retiree that had a wide social circle in the workplace and may feel lost without those connections now that she's transitioned into retirement. Further, she may live alone with less physical availability to travel to spend time with extended family or friends, and she may feel self-conscious about her aging process, and due to this, she may withdraw from her daily routine and stop taking care of herself. Unfortunately, Lisa may begin to show symptoms of depression due to her loneliness. Finding a balance between these two extremes is important for all aspects of health, physically, mentally, and emotionally. While it is beneficial for your health to remain involved with your family and within the community, it's also necessary to establish a balance between involvement and time for yourself. Some people can thrive from spending 20 hours a week volunteering, and others can do better with less. So that challenge is finding a balance, and it looks different for everyone. So finding what works best for you and adjusting accordingly is really key. So talking about symptoms of burnout and isolation. And typically when we think of burnout, we think of the workforce. So actually burnout and isolation are relevant across all lifespans. So what is burnout? It's a state of chronic stress, and it can lead to detrimental mental and physical outcomes. And some of those physical outcomes can be strokes or cardiovascular issues or coronary heart disease. It can also leave you prone to depression and anxiety. So it's really important to recognize some of those symptoms and signs so you can recognize it not only in yourself, but for your loved ones as well. So some signs to look for are physical and emotional exhaustion. And this can look like sleep issues, not sleeping enough or sleeping too much, fatigue, restlessness, or feeling keyed up or on edge, a sad mood, or being not interested in doing things that you would normally enjoy, such as hobbies or interests, or being with friends and family. It can also show signs of cynicism or detachment, such as a "why does this matter" attitude or feeling emotionally numb. Other symptoms can manifest as feeling like you're ineffective or you're not accomplishing as much as you should be. Thoughts of should I be doing more? Am I not doing enough? Could I be doing better? And it can also manifest as angry outbursts or lack of appetite, increased illnesses, or lack of attention and concentration. So due to how detrimental these physical and emotional symptoms can be with burnout, it's really important to pay attention to how we can prevent it. So a really big piece of it is the mindset that you have. So if you have a perfectionistic mindset going into retirement, you've saved up, you have a lot of plans, a lot of things that you want to do, and it's tempting to want to do everything and believe that you can do it all. But it's really important to pace yourself mentally and physically, engaging in self-care, exercising, as Dr. Yellen mentioned. Practicing mindfulness is also something that's really important because you have saved up this time in retirement and you should enjoy it and be present for that. So it can be anything from 5 minutes to an hour, and it doesn't always have to be meditating. It can be going for walks in nature or gardening or doing yoga or cooking and just being mindful and present. And also the most vital piece for both burnout and isolation is keeping your social network alive. And this can look different for everyone. So some people may still want to attend professional events and keep up with what was going on in their career field. Other people may want to spend more time with friends and family or get involved with your local senior center or community involvement. And as I mentioned before, these things are key for isolation. So how do you know when you're not doing enough or when you need to start putting yourself out there more? So this is common. Isolation can happen in retirement because a lot of new retirees struggle with finding new friends and developing a new routine without having that work and colleague connections for them to go to daily. So isolation in retirement can also lead to a lot of issues. Loneliness has been shown to raise stress levels and inflammation in the body, which can increase the risk of heart disease, Alzheimer's, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, dementia, depression, cognitive decline, and sometimes suicide. So it's really, really important to pay attention to those symptoms for yourself and others to make sure that you combat it. So some tips would be joining clubs or groups that interest you. And another great thing for cognitive decline is taking evening classes. A lot of colleges and universities offer free classes to the elderly population. Also, it's important to spend time clarifying what you're passionate about and would like to pursue in retirement. What do you want to travel? Do you want to write, teach, spend time with your grandchildren? It's really important to inspire yourself during this time because you've worked hard and it's time to maybe pick up a passion project. And volunteer is also really important. And local organizations, a lot of churches offer volunteer opportunities and school-based programs. So finding what you're interested in and how to engage in it in retirement. And also, as Hunter mentioned, inviting people over, keeping a consistent schedule with family and friends is really important. And while you're together, combating that cognitive decline by engaging in mind-stimulating activities such as playing games with your family, playing cards, playing board games, teaching your grandchildren to cook or garden. So all of those are really important. So what does balance look like in retirement? So the main thing that you start is by identifying what activities you would like to be involved in. So clarifying what it is you're interested in, what it is you're passionate about. Maybe you want to volunteer at the local shelter. Maybe you want to take a new exercise class or join the library's book club. And then finding what you want and then keeping a routine, developing a daily routine and a weekly schedule that includes what's important for you, what your lifestyle goals are in retirement. And also being sure to test your schedule. So you might find that after a week you can add more and it's not overwhelming. Or you might realize that you have to let some activities go because you're starting to experience some symptoms of burnout. So it's important to say no to overscheduling and prioritizing what's important for you in retirement, taking time for yourself, engaging in self-care to keep your mental and physical well-being stable in retirement. Hand it back over to Erin.
All right. Well, I know absolutely none of us in extension or in the university system at all know anything about overscheduling, right? We all keep everything manageable and on a good level. So, it can be hard for us as we're transitioning from a life of crazy, to realizing that, it's time to take some time for ourselves. So I want to thank my 2 graduate students for providing some really good information for you guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with a few more tips for continuing to plan for your future. So now, remember I said that we're not going to be talking about finances today, but I'm not going to get too much into this, but I just want to make a reference to the fact that we need to continue to manage our finances even after we are retired. So we know that we are living so much longer than we have ever lived in the history of history, right? And we're spending a lot more years outside of the workforce as a result of that. So we want to make sure that we're adequately maintaining our finances throughout our retirement, because the reality is that we could spend 30 plus years in retirement. Now, in the past, when we retired, our life expectancy only gave us a couple of years past retirement age. So the way that we are managing our money now is going to look a lot different than it did back when your parents retired or the generation before you did so. So it's really important to realize that even though you've been talking about the financial capacity to retire for years and years and years, now that you are retired, don't overlook that, and make sure that you're continuing to work with those financial professionals that you've associated with to keep that up to date and make sure that you're doing okay financially. The next area that I want to mention about continuing to plan is your health, and particularly related to advanced healthcare planning. So if you have not already completed your advanced directives that are related to your medical care, retirement, of course, is the ideal time to do it. If you've not completed these documents, any time is the ideal time to do it. So the documents that I'm talking about, and now sometimes they're called different things in different states, but in Kansas we call them your durable power of attorney for healthcare. And that's the individual that you're going to name to make decisions on your behalf should you become incapacitated or unable to do so. The other document is your living will. And your living will is the document that's going to outline the preferences for end-of-life care that you have. So in Kansas, that's generally a document that says that you don't want life-sustaining procedures, such as being put on a ventilator or having artificial nutrition and hydration and those sorts of things. The other document that some people will consider, and this is generally only reserved for the incredibly elderly and the incredibly frail, is that pre-hospital do not resuscitate order. So maybe that's not something that any of us on this webinar need, but maybe that's just something that you might want to be aware of if you have parents who are nearing the end of their life. That pre-hospital DNR is the document that you need if you do not wish to be resuscitated or have resuscitation attempted should you stop breathing or your heart stops beating. The last document in regards to your advanced healthcare planning is the HIPAA authorization form. Now, this is one that sometimes gets overlooked, but this is a document that you can fill out that will give anyone that you designate access to your medical records in whatever capacity you would like them to have. There's also some restrictions that you can include there as well. But that's really important because if something were to happen to you, you would want your children or your spouse or whoever you've named your power of attorney to make the informed decision on your behalf. So that will give them access to your medical records to be able to do that. The last area in which I want you to consider continuing to plan is in your home. So there's a lot of areas in the home that are really important to think about as we retire and really throughout our lifespan in general. But the question that I always ask people, and I generally get the same answer, is where would you prefer to spend your retirement? Or where would you prefer to spend your time as an older adult? Would you prefer to spend that in a long-term care facility, such as a nursing home, or would you prefer to spend that time in your home? And 99.9% of the time, everyone says they would prefer to spend that time in their home. But there's some important things that you need to consider in order to make sure that your home is adaptable to an aging lifestyle. So if your home is more accessible, you're going to be able to stay there longer. If your home has the necessary repairs that it needs, perhaps you have some rickety old steps that need reinforcing, or you have some carpeting that's fraying and perhaps needs replaced and has become a trip hazard. Replacing those things and fixing those things can impact your ability to stay in your home longer. So one thing that I often recommend in this regard is get another set of eyes with you. So ask a child, a neighbor, a friend, or even an expert in your area to come over to your home, walk around the outside of your home, and then walk around the inside of your home and make a list of things that could be improved or enhanced or fixed in order to help you stay in your home for a longer period of time. We know that people want to age in place, but we need to make sure that the environment is suitable for that and is safe for adults to stay in their home as long as possible. So if you're thinking, well, I'm in perfectly good health now, this isn't something that I need to worry about, that's really not true. Because now, if you are facing retirement now or in your future, or again, if this webinar is more for your parents than it is for you, taking that time when you have the time before you become unable to make those repairs and make those improvements is going to be more beneficial and is going to help you in the future. The last thing that I'll talk about with planning for your future is your stuff. And this is a really big conversation among my generation, because my generation is generally the type that doesn't want to inherit all of their parents' stuff. Or if you are going to use a term that is less, nice, maybe your kids are calling it your crap. And that is going to be a really honest conversation, because your children may not want to get all of your stuff. What are they going to do with it? So previously, other generations needed their parents' stuff, right? We needed that to pass on to the homestead or to the farm, or maybe we didn't have those resources. But now that children are living away from their parents, they oftentimes have their own established homes, and they really don't have the need to inherit your silverware set, if we're being blunt about it, which many people are being blunt in these conversations because it's becoming a very real reality for some people. So thinking about the amount of stuff that you have in your home can be really important. And then thinking about sort of what can you get rid of, maybe what sort of sentimental items do you want to pass on to your children, and when can you start to do that? So when we talk about this, we oftentimes think about if you were, and this is going to be blunt, again, if you were to die today, look around your home and all the stuff that you have, and think about, my children are going to have to take care of all of that. So perhaps there's some Christmas decorations in the storage closet that you haven't used in 25 years. Perhaps now is a good time to start going through those things, donating them, or disposing of them responsibly. So there's some really interesting and fun articles on getting rid of your stuff as you hit retirement. In one book that we have read recently, some of our extension agents who are interested in adult development and aging at Kansas State have read a book called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. And so this is a really interesting area that it's a pretty hot topic, and people can get, it can be a really challenging thing to do as well, but it might also be fun, and you might find things that you haven't seen in a while, or that you might get some use out of now that you didn't have before. So thinking about your stuff is a really another impactful thing that you can do for your life in retirement. The last thing that we'll just share with you, again on the top here are the 4 main things that we've talked about today, but tips for getting started. We don't want your retirement plans to be overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I have to do all these things and I have to clear out my house of all my clutter and take care of myself and socialize and do all these things. It's not meant to be overwhelming. These are just things that we want you to consider doing in your life at any point. And so taking small baby steps can really be beneficial. So making a list of reasonable goals, maybe you want to space those out about, this month I'm going to tackle this closet, or this month I'm going to strive to go for a walk 3 times a week. Whatever the goal is that you would like to make for yourself, make it reasonable so that you can actually achieve it and have that satisfaction of doing so. Starting small is another thing. Going back to the cleaning out the clutter, start with a closet instead of the entire house. Going back to your physical activity, start with walking 3 times a week instead of going into CrossFit 7 times a day, for example. Taking those small steps can really have a bigger impact. Asking for help is also important. So remember when I talked about making sure that your environment is a safe one for you to age in, ask for help from that family member, neighbor, friend to come in and sort of walk around your home environment with you and talk about what changes you could make in order to help you stay there for a longer period of time. Taking your time is the next one. Again, once you retire, oftentimes people have these giant long lists of all these things that they want to accomplish, which is wonderful, but you don't have to do it in a month. You have, like I said, many people are going to spend up to 30 years in retirement, if not longer. So taking your time to accomplish some of those things can take some stress off of you. Lastly, don't forget to enjoy life. Those of you who are facing retirement in the near future or who are already retired, congratulations, good for you, enjoy it. Take that time to embrace it. Many people say that they've been liberated from their work life, and that is such an exciting experience. So even though we're talking about some things that you might want to consider doing in retirement or when you're preparing for retirement, don't forget to just sit back and enjoy it. You deserve it. You've earned it. So take that time to walk around in your pajamas all day long and watch TV and do those fun things that we just want to take our time to relax and do. And when you are working on these things to help improve your life, celebrate those accomplishments, no matter how big or small they are. Take the time to embrace what you've done and enjoy it. So that's all we have for you today. Again, here's our pretty faces and our email addresses if you would like to reach out, if you have any questions for us that you think of in the future. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to bring this information to you. And I just want to give a shout out to my 2 graduate students who have never done anything like this before, and they're still surviving, they're still breathing, they haven't passed out yet from nerves. And we're so excited that to be able to bring students into Extension and teach them about the outreach that we do and the impact that we can have. So thank you for your attention today, and we'll take any questions, and Mark will be facilitating those.
All right, thanks, Aaron and Hunter and Rebecca. Really appreciate that. Again, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A, or I guess we can look at both places, but that's what we prefer.
Mark, someone asked about the slides. If Aaron's willing to share them, we can put them up on the Learn site. We can create a PDF of them so no one can edit them or anything like that. If you're okay, I can make them available on learn.extension.org.
Perfect. We would be glad to share.
Okay.
And just to let you know, I'm sending in the chat box right now, you can see there's an evaluation for this. If you take the time to do that, I think after you close out, it's going to automatically send you to that as well. And then I think just to make sure you get the evaluation, because we really want the information, I think we're going to resend that out to everybody in an email who signed up for this. So Elaine Bailey says, thanks for presentation, gives much food for thought. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions. Again, thank you, Aaron, Hunter, and Becca, for your time. And Mark, thanks again for hosting us here.
Sure.
Again, we'll be back on May 9th for another webinar dealing with our social media and how to make the best of your social events and so forth with that to I guess, promote your programming. So look forward to seeing some of you there. I think we're probably ready to wrap stuff up unless anybody's got, oh, I saw something else come in the Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, if someone asked about the slides, I'm putting a link in chat. They'll be there. That's the Extension Learn event. And you'll want to scroll down. There's an event materials section that I'll add, and that's where the slides, I'll have a link to the slides there.
I think it's been a great presentation. We look, again, thanks for your time. Look forward to seeing you all again in the future. Mark, appreciate your help again. You got anything else for us?
Nope, that's it. That's it. Thanks,
All right.
folks. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yeah.